tuned in to the Andrew Lawton Show.
So right now, if you are a prospective Western student, or not even prospective, if you are planning in 2 weeks, which is when classes start, to be going to Western, but you are not comfortable or not willing for whatever reason to get a booster, you now have to make alternative arrangements. And let's talk a little bit about what the timeline has done here, because it was 1 week ago yesterday when the policy was announced that students had to put in their first tuition installment. So that was a week before the vaccine mandate was announced. 2 weeks to go for classes to start. Now, Western has said, not publicly, but they've said privately, and I got a copy of an email from them, that it was going to be a refund policy if someone wants it. If someone wants a refund and they ask by September 1st, they'll get their tuition money back. But even if that happens, it's not going to deal with the disruption for, hey, I plan to be in school and to be this many credits more closer to my degree, and now I can't do that. It doesn't deal with a lease if you had signed a contract for an apartment for the year ahead, and now you can't go to school. And if you want to talk about how punitive this mandate is, it even applies to online students if there is any in-person component. So that could even be an exam. If you're doing a class that for 8 months you can do from your own home from your computer, but you need to go for like 1 day to do an exam, all of a sudden you're subject to the vaccine mandate. So let's dispense with this idea that it has anything to do with science at all. They're going above and beyond what the government is asking of them. They're going above and beyond what any other post-secondary institutions in the country are doing. And at a time when people around the country and around the world are trying to move beyond this 2020 COVID mentality, you've got institutions like Western in London, Ontario, that are doubling down and tripling down. It's no longer a post-secondary education. It's a dose secondary education, 3 doses to be exact. And that's only now until they update it in the winter term and say you need the 4th dose if you want to go back to finish the second half of whatever class you started in September. We're going to talk about this from a couple of different angles, and I also want to get into the bigger picture here. But fortunately, I have to point out, students are fighting back. Students at Western are pushing back against this. And one notable example is a Twitter and Instagram campaign that launched called Enough is Enough Western. The creator of this, Kendra Hancock, joins me on the line now. Kendra, we were talking a little bit about the disruption aspect here, but let me just first off talk about how many students are affected by this, because I know you may not have exact numbers, but we know that booster uptake has been very low in general, certainly for people that are in the student age group. I imagine that there are a lot of students who last year were fully vaccinated that this year are ineligible to continue their studies.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually just did some polling on that on Instagram. Obviously, it's a pretty casual poll. It's not like it's a full-fledged investigation or anything, but we asked point blank who got the mandate or who got the vaccines last year because of Western's mandate, and versus who got it out of their own accord. The numbers were, very stark for people who got it because of Western. And we also asked right after that, if you got it because of Western's mandate, did you feel coerced? And so far it's overwhelming for people feeling like they're absolutely forced into this situation.
And the challenge is that if someone was, let's say, in their 3rd year last year, and they figured, okay, I'm halfway through, I've got to get the mandate and go the next year. This year, they're even more invested. And it's challenging because Western would look, and they did last year, and said, oh, wow, we have almost a 100% vaccination rate. Yeah, but you got that through coercion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one is always really funny to me. I heard it mentioned actually a couple times today. That's the go-to defense. It's kind of like if a country said, oh, well, 100% of our citizens have drafted themselves into the war, have joined the war effort. But then you say, yeah, but don't you have conscription? So it's either you get an exemption or you get kicked out of the country. So obviously
if you expel anyone that's not vaccinated, you are left with, curiously, a 100% vaccination rate. It's funny how that works out.
It's a strange thing to brag about.
What's been the effect on you personally of this? Where are you in your studies, and what will this mean for you?
It's actually been quite a long road, and it's been just about a year since the first news hit about the pretty strong vaccination mandate. I just finished up in my bachelor's through Huron at Western after being technically kicked out. That was a very interesting, long process, but I know a few people were able to fight it and obviously take advantage of honestly good timing and just being resilient in order to get their degree. It cost me a few extra $1,000s to do it because I had to do online studies at an out of province school to finish up. I worked really hard to do it on a tighter timeline, but was able to get my degree. So happy now to go back to Western for a master's program, a year-long master's program, and now obviously that's completely up in the air. So dreams have been a little crushed, but I'm putting that aside because I know that all the people we're representing right now through the account are all in the same situation, and they're obviously unhappy too.
You mentioned on your, well, maybe not you, but someone on your Enough is Enough account, may have been you, tweeted out, "Hey, Western U, a lot of students are ready to request refunds. We're curious, are you ready?" I don't know if it's a threat or a prediction or however we want to characterize it, but you're thinking here that there's going to be a noticeable financial hit to the university?
Yes, that's what we're seeing, and I'd say it's legal reasons. It's not a threat. No, it's definitely just to put a little bit of pressure and put them on the spot because they need to be held accountable. But yeah, from everything we've been seeing, countless of people are reaching out to us, are sharing these infographics on how to request a refund, as you were saying, how if you do it before a certain time, you get a full refund. A lot of people have told us they've already done it. A lot of people are saying they're going to wait to see sort of what happens with obviously the advocacy coming from us and from the student councils, and hopefully we can get some things to change because it needs to change. But it should be a fear of theirs because it's going to happen because students have had enough. So enough is enough.
I looked at the Western timetable is posted publicly, so anyone can go and look at what courses they offer. And there are not a lot of courses that are available online. There are a lot that you can only do in person. And as I mentioned briefly earlier, there are also courses that may be online, but they have an in-person exam, which under Western's policy would theoretically disqualify you unless you could get an accommodation or an exemption or whatever the proper protocol is there. So for students to do what you did is very difficult in general, depending on program, and certainly at a master's level, at a graduate level, when things are very specialized. And they're giving students 2 weeks to figure this out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's got to be part of the goal. It was really difficult to do it last year. Not a lot of people were able to. Some people were able to do things differently and able to get through the year. Kudos to them, of course. But I'd say Western's, it seems like they're trying to make it more impossible, and that's the feeling amongst students. And that's obviously really discouraging considering they are so, I'd say, so distant from the student culture at the moment. This is one of the first times in a long time I've seen the entire Western student population be united. And that's a really great thing. That's something that an administration should be proud of and take advantage of. Instead, it's trying to control us and divide us through silly tactics.
Have you gotten any sense as to who's really pushing this? I mean, I know some theories have been that the faculty, where you have some that are quite, COVID paranoid, have been pushing this. And you can kind of see this in the mask policy, because if you look at the Western mask policy, it's that if you're in the classroom, where students are seated, generally not talking, you have to wear your mask. But if you're in the hallway talking, doing whatever you want, you don't have to wear a mask. It's just encouraged. So the fact that, COVID only exists in the classroom and not in the hallway would seem to not be particularly logical. And I draw from that you had professors that were saying, we will not teach in classrooms where people are not masked.
Yeah, it's been an interesting to watch kind of unfold. And I feel bad for the professors who are not for this because they've been absolutely silenced. I mean, I've witnessed it. I've talked to professors. They've reached out to me and some of them have been vocal more on a private level as, they go through these faculty meetings.
Well, yeah, tenured professors who thought they were unfireable were fired last year because they couldn't comply with the vax mandate.
Yeah, and I mean, isn't that so, it's indicative of academia at the moment, but it's so against fundamental academic principles. I know so many people who have gone through the last year and say, I'm done with university. Obviously, it's not a culture and environment they want to be in, and I absolutely get that because it's become what it's become right now. But unfortunately, for many people midway through their degree, you already have so much money put into it. If you want to be employable, if you want to move on the rest of your life, you're already so invested, you have to continue.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I would also add that, we were talking about coercion earlier. And I think for students who just have a timeline, like I remember when I came out of high school, I had obviously every prediction I had for my life ended up being wrong. But, it's like, okay, I've got 4 years to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And it's easy to set those targets and timelines. And you don't anticipate that you could be a straight A student, you could be getting 80s, 90s, and for nothing to do with your academic performance, you will be at least a year behind, maybe 2 years behind, last year plus this year, because of this vaccine mandate, and unable to complete your studies at all, or unable to complete them on the timeline you wanted, and for no scientific basis.
And that's the part that really stings. I mean, we saw it last year, and I hope we can avoid it this year. I truly do. Where good students, people who do extracurriculars, who put in the hard work, who are perhaps honor roll, who really care about their studies, they're putting all this work in, and they're getting trespass notices when their exemption fails. They are getting carried out of class by security for failing to comply. So it's backwards, obviously, and I hope it's not. Obviously, from our position, from what I'm seeing from students, I don't think it's too far gone. I think we can take it back. I think we can get back to being united and reasonable and actually focusing on what matters, which is education and the student experience.
I mean, obviously, there are, under the Human Rights Act, and Western has acknowledged this, exemptions that people can get for medical reasons and also for religious or conscientious reasons. Now, these have been very difficult for some people to obtain, although I know there have been some examples of it. Some students can go this route, but obviously, if that process becomes overrun, Western's probably just going to say, no, we're not playing ball here. Do you think Western will cave on this, or do you think that, they're just committed at this point?
I think they should cave on this. I think it's in their best interest. Obviously, if their motivations aren't the Middlesex London Health Unit or the Chief Medical Officer of Health, if their motivations for this aren't directly from public health recommendations like they have said, if that's not the case, then their motivations are obviously more on the selfish side. There's obviously something else going on, which could overpower their interest in hearing students out. But I think they won't have much of a choice because students are really passionate, and obviously are getting organized. And I think that this is that we have a good chance at making an impact here.
Just because you brought it up, I will have to ask you about this idea of the guidance and advice. And there was something that was very interesting that you pointed out to me when we were speaking earlier, that the previous policy, the two-dose policy, had all of this preambulatory stuff about where the policy basically came from. The new one doesn't have that. It doesn't say this is a direct response to the guidance and advice we're giving here. And so far, I can't find anyone giving guidance and advice saying this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a sneaking suspicion that that could happen and that they might try to do something along those lines. So I saved that document just so, even for my own reasons, so I could compare, because last year, of course, the parameters were pretty laid out, and there wasn't too much of a choice on their side, just because of the state Ontario was in and the direction the Ontario government was going. But that's not the case now. So I know what a lot of people and what a lot of students are thinking and are saying, thankfully, is where is the data? Where is the recommendation? What is the reasoning? Where is this coming from? We need to know. We need the data that actually shows that someone with 2 or less doses is a physical threat to others on campus, because that has to be the bottom line.
I know you touched on this a little bit before, but the audio was not as great on that first answer. So if you need to restate anything, please do. But why have you made the decision to speak out? Because I know a lot of people don't want to go down this road of opening themselves up for all of the naysaying and negativity that comes from speaking out on anything, but certainly on this issue. Why have you decided, I'm willing to put my name and face behind this?
Mm-hmm. I'm actually a really private person, so this whole thing has been a bit overwhelming, but it's just one of those situations where it needs to be said. Last year, I attempted to speak out. It didn't go quite as well, just because I'd say people weren't ready yet. People weren't ready to see it yet. People were thinking, okay, we go along with this, and then everything will be fine. Things will resume.
It's just 1 year. It's just most of us are vaccinated anyway. It doesn't matter. It's really that
Yeah, of course.
mentality we're up against. Yeah.
Yes, and then people, I guess people who maybe didn't believe that, or maybe who were sympathetic, it would just, maybe there wasn't a point in trying to speak up or support it. I just say it, people were probably looking forward to the future and things getting better. And now that more people know that places like Western are hung up on not moving forward, things have to be said. So basically, as soon as I saw the announcement, I knew this had to be done, and I was kind of preparing beforehand, and I thought about some things that might be helpful for the community to know, or to have one central spot where people could talk and could support one another. But I did not expect it to go so well as it has so far. I've definitely had to take on some extra support, and we'll have to continue doing that because I was able to keep up with messages. Now I'm probably 700 messages behind, so it's gone a little out of hand, but obviously in a great way.
Well, I'm glad you got to my message then, and we're able to come on. The Twitter account is Students for Agency. It's called Enough is Enough Western, and I know you're also on. What's the Instagram handle as well? I'm never as good on Instagram.
Oh, it's the same. So it's Students for #4 Agency.
All right, good. And I think there's a tremendous value in what you're doing, not only because you're right, and I think on the right side of history here, but also because when Western touts that 100% vaccination rate or 99.99 bajillion percent vaccination rate, they're trying to isolate anyone that's not in that group. And they're trying to say that you are alone. And I think when you stand up in the way that you've done, you're telling people, hey, you're not alone. And there are hundreds, if not thousands of us.
Absolutely. And that's what it's about. We're going to be united. It's your own choice. If you want 4 vaccines, go for it. If you want 0, go for it. If you want to wear a mask for however long you want to wear it for, go ahead. It shouldn't keep us apart. There's no reason for it to keep us apart, especially as a school, especially as a community. So I just hope we can continue this momentum and keep moving forward.
Well said. Well, what's next for Enough is Enough? What can we expect from you in the coming days?
Well, there's definitely going to be some more posts, and the students have spoken. They want, if it is needed, which we'll have to kind of keep an eye on the next couple of days, they want a in-person demonstration. Students are ready to have their voices heard in that format. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that, but we're definitely very willing to get something like that going.
Well, let me know, and I will be there as a fellow Londoner. Kendra Hancock, creator of Enough is Enough. Thank you so much, and truly, congratulations on launching this movement.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.